friends. I'm Karen, and this is the Family Food for Moms podcast. We're talking about inspiration for family cooking and dining. Today, we're going to be talking about what we can learn from the Amish about food and eating and dining. The Amish are a very healthy community because they eat very simply from food that they cultivate on their land, and they have a huge amount of physical exercise, having to look after their farms, grow their food, and do a lot of manual labor that we would use machines for. They're good at working as a community and helping each other, buying from each other. But today we're going to talk about what they eat and the healthy lifestyle that they live. So the Amish definitely like to grow and produce their own food as much as possible. They use old, tried and true methods of farming that have been passed down the generations, rather than modern industrialized farming methods, which are not as good for the animals. So they're very good at being self-sufficient. Often they would have cows, they would have chickens for eggs and meat. They would butcher their own food. They would grow vegetables and fruit, or they would buy from each other, and then they would get milk and then make their own cheese and dairy products. So I looked up what makes up the Amish diet, and the foundation is traditional, simple, and hearty foods. They work very hard with physical labor, and so they need food that's going to sustain them for the day. They can't exist on salads. They need good meat, good carbohydrates that will help their bodies with the hard physical labor that they do throughout the day. So let's look at what they eat regularly. So meat and poultry, chicken, often used in casseroles, stews, and roasts. Beef and pork, they often raise their own cows and pigs and use that again in stews or fried meat or sausages. They do use turkey as well. Then they would make their own bread and often grind their own grain. So whether it's ordinary bread or sourdough, they like to bake pies, biscuits, anything that they want as a snack or a treat, they would often bake rather than buy. Then vegetables, potatoes, corn, cabbage, root vegetables are very popular to use in soups, stews, and casseroles. Cabbage they would often make into sauerkraut and use in coleslaw or stews. And then fresh seasonal vegetables such as tomatoes, green beans, peas, squash, etc. Dairy, their farms produce plenty of milk, and then they would make butter and cheese. Amish butter is known for its rich, creamy taste. They would make soft cheeses like cream cheese to harder varieties like cheddar and cottage cheese. Then they enjoy making hearty one-pot dishes with meats, vegetables, and starches baked together in a rich, creamy sauce. So a lamb casserole or a beef casserole or chicken pieces, stews and soups with those hearty ingredients. Then they definitely enjoy sweets and desserts, but as I said before, they're usually made from scratch at home with fresh, healthy ingredients, not from the grocery store. A classic Amish dessert made with molasses filling and a crumbly top is called shoofly pie. They even make their own jams and preserves from seasonal fruits like strawberries, peaches, and raspberries, which they'll have with bread or as part of their desserts. Another popular treat is apple butter, which is a sweet, spicy spread made from apples, sugar, and spices. They enjoy their coffee and herbal teas, often made from plants that they grow themselves, like mint tea or chamomile tea. And then homemade fruit juices. Apple, grape are common in their households. Of course, the Amish are good at preserving food. A lot of them don't use electricity and so wouldn't have proper refrigerators or freezers. So they would store their food in the old-fashioned way in cellars over the winter, and then they would can and preserve and pickle foods to make them last. They would can fruits, certain vegetables, tomato sauces for cooking, even meat. And then they would pickle cabbage, cucumbers, etc. to have fermented foods on hand, which are very healthy and good for digestion. Then, of course, the fresh eggs from the chickens would be used in baking and breakfasts and casseroles. So their diet really centers around the whole simple foods with a focus on what's locally grown, what they have available. And their meals are hearty and nourishing and generous, which reflects their hard-working, family-orientated lifestyle. They prioritize quality and tradition in the way they approach food and meals. So what can we learn from them? Let's talk about some specifics. I've mentioned many of these, but I wanted to just list them out again. So simple ingredients, locally grown seasonal ingredients, and meals that are typically made from scratch using whole unprocessed foods. Seasonal eating what's in season, encourages a diet that's higher in nutrients because they don't have to stand around for months before they're eaten. And the foods are fresh and nutrient dense. Then homegrown and preserved foods, so raising livestock and poultry, growing their own vegetables and fruit, preserving their food through canning and pickling or fermenting. Now, most of us definitely aren't able to raise our own livestock. I don't think I would be that way inclined. But we can be aware of the quality of what we eat and buy directly from farmers markets, or even from the Amish if you live nearby. The food will be a lot lower in pesticides and much higher in nutrition. The raw milk has more enzymes that help you digest it effectively, and many nutrients that are destroyed by the pasteurizing process. Unpasteurized dairy is definitely the best option if it's legal where you live. And even attempting to make simple cheeses like cottage cheese or finding a good quality source of those is very helpful. Amish meals are family affairs. They emphasize the importance of eating together, of slowing down and enjoying the meal in a mindful way, preparing the meal with care and sharing it in a community or a family setting. Cooking is a time-honored tradition that's passed down through the generations from grandparents or parents. Grandmother's recipes are cherished. Grandmother's ways of doing things are honored. And people learn the value of tradition and craftsmanship in the kitchen. Cooking is seen as an art, something that they work on and grow in skill in, rather than something to rush through or do as quickly as possible. And the result is nutrient-dense, hearty, filling, and satisfying meals that sustain them through their long days of physical labor. Dishes like stews, casseroles, and bread that's freshly baked are staples in their diets. And then because they grow and produce most of their own food, they are self-sufficient. They don't need grocery stores. They're able to provide what they need for their families. And they see this cooking and growing food as a service and a gift of love and care for their families. This definitely makes the Amish healthier than the average person because they avoid processed foods and eat meals prepared from scratch. So that's something we can aim towards. It's not always possible. I definitely have backups. I'll buy some frozen meals for those days when things are too crazy, but then I try to do fresh from scratch in between. And I'll always try to do something in the crock pot or the instant pot on a day, and some vegetables in the steamer, and then it will cook away while I'm busy with the rest of life. And then living with gratitude, enjoying community, enjoying family, being aware of the blessing of food and homegrown produce and hearty home-cooked meals all contributes to our health and well-being. And finding ways to move and be active is hugely helpful to our health as well. The main thing that sticks out for me when I think of the Amish is the ancient ways. They've gone back to or continued the ancient ways of growing our own food, harvesting it ourselves, making things from scratch, doing as much as we can to make our meals wholesome, not processed or refined, but meals that are simple and delicious and filling and nourishing. Thanks for listening. I hope there are 1 or 2 tips that you can apply in your own kitchen or in your dining room if you're thinking of how to eat the meal. So have a lovely week, and I'll see you next time.